This dice has 12 sides, just like our chromatic scale. Gave us a 6. That means F. We've got to use an F in this chord progression. I've spent years of my life studying functional harmony and understanding how chords and chord progressions work. So why would I write a song by rolling the dice? 9 is A flat. Lately I've been feeling kind of uninspired and in a rut where all my songs use the same types of progressions. My idea was that this would force me out of my comfort zone and it would make me confront some sounds and some different ideas and movements that I wouldn't have otherwise considered. 7 is G flat. So here's how this works. The dice are picking the root notes of our chords, but we get to determine what order we're going to put these chords in and what kind of chord they're going to be. They can be major, minor, dominant, etc. So 1 is a C. So the dice are bringing an element of randomness, but it's going to be up to us and our musical aptitude to figure out what to do with it. How are we going to turn these random inputs into a beautiful song? 11 is going to be B flat. When I first rolled these chords, I thought for sure I was going to end up in the key of E flat. But the 4, E flat. But I didn't. I actually ended up in a completely different key than I expected, and I absolutely love the way that I brought my music theory experience all together to find this sound. I've already had 1 6. This is another F. As I see it, we have 3 problems we need to contend with. The first one is just, can we find a key center? We're given 8 random chords. Can we put them together in a way that makes sense in a single key? Our second problem is going to be, how do we arrange these chords into a song? Should they be major? Should they be minor? Should they be dominant? And what order should we put them in? And our last problem, which is the one that's scaring me the most right now, is can we come up with a compelling melody that will work across this new chord progression we created? Let's do one more. That's an 8. 8 is G. Let's look again at the chords that we pulled. The first one was an F. I want to put them here in kind of scale order. The next one is an A flat, then a G flat, a C, B flat, E flat, F, and last but not least, G. The first problem we have to solve is figure out what key we're going to be in. This is important because in almost every song that we ever play, the last chord of the song is the same as the key that we're in, the 1 chord. That's not always true for the first chord of the song. It is often, but it's almost always true for the last chord. But this is a little bit tricky because in order for us to feel back home in that key when we finally end up there, the chords that come before it have to lead us there. And just to illustrate this, let's say that we wanted to end our song in the key of G. In order to bring us back there, we would need other chords in the key of G. But look at the chords that we were dealt. E flat, B flat, A flat. These just don't belong in the key of G. To make the key of G work, we probably need a 5 chord. That means we need a D7. But the dice gods did not give us a D chord, so we're kind of out of luck there. So the question is, within all of these notes that we drew, is there even a key that works? Is there a key that all of these notes belong to? And I can tell you right now, the answer is no. I think we're going to be okay if these don't all belong to the same key, as long as we can find one that kind of generally works. I think we actually need to hold off on deciding what key we're going to be in and see what else we can learn from these chords first. Remember, the dice told us what the roots of our chords were, but they didn't tell us the quality of those chords. We get to decide what order they're in and if they're major, minor, dominant, diminished, half diminished, whatever. Now, when we're playing jazz, a huge number of our chords are going to belong to one of 2 progressions. It could be a 2-5, in this case like C minor to F7, or it could be a 5-1, like an F7 that goes to B flat major. And of course, if you put those 3 together, you get the most common progression in all of jazz, which is the 2-5-1, C minor to F7 to B flat. So this is one really compelling movement that we could use out of the chords that we were given. Now, if we put this C down for a second and we pick up an E flat instead, we actually get a similar move. We can make an F minor to B flat 7 to E flat. This is another 2-5-1, this time in the key of E flat major. We've got 4 more chords we got to figure out what to do with. But immediately I noticed that we were given another F. We actually were dealt 2 Fs by the dice. Because of these 2 Fs, we have the possibility to actually do both of these progressions we just talked about. We could do a 2-5 in the key of B flat, and then because we've got another F, we can immediately do a 2-5-1 in E flat. Knowing these little tiny bite-sized progressions, these 2 5s, the 5 1s, the 2 5 1s, I call these micro progressions because almost every song that you run into in the real book is basically going to be assembled by all these different little micro progression movements. There are 9 of these different movements, and in my Jazz Fundamentals course, there's a whole lesson on these micro progressions where we talk about all 9 of them and how to find them in the key. If you're interested at all in this idea of these micro progressions, or you just want to learn how to play jazz in general, there's a link to my Jazz Fundamentals course down in the description with a discount code. Anyway, coming back to where we were, we had this 2 5 and we had this 2 5 1. This one ends with an F, this one starts with an F. And so this gives us an opportunity to do something that is super common in jazz. Essentially what we're going to do is use 2 different F chords. So in our first progression, we had C minor to F7. But in our 2 5 1, we had F minor that then goes to B flat and to E flat. So our 2 F chords that are back to back is actually first F7 and then F minor. This concept where the 5 and 1 progression becomes the 2 of the next is so incredibly common, we run into it all over the place. To show you what I mean, look at the jazz standard Misty. Our first line ends on A flat major, but immediately after that we play A flat minor, which is the 2 in the next key. We've still got 3 chords left. We've got an A flat, a G flat, and a G natural. This is a little bit awkward. I'm not exactly sure what we're going to do with these chords, but I think we can figure it out. One thing I think we could try is that we have these 2 F chords, and while it's totally fine for us to just put these right back to back, because we have this G chord and this G flat chord here, we could perhaps like insert these in between because it's just a nice little chromatic movement. Like maybe we could go from F7 to G minor to G flat dominant to F. As much as I really like this kind of walk down sound into the F minor chord, I'm not sure it's going to work for us in this case because it leaves us with just 1 chord left, which is this A flat chord, and I have no idea where that A flat chord would fit. The only way I could make it really work was to make it A flat diminished, because a diminished chord's whole purpose is just to be dissonant and not belong, and so I could put it basically anywhere and it worked okay, but it felt kind of like a cheat, and I didn't want to do that to you guys. I wanted to find an authentic way to do it, but that's when this hit me. Now, of the 3 chords that we have left, I want you to notice something. If we look at this in G flat is the 1, then A flat is our 2. We have a 2 and a 1, which is almost everything we need for a 2-5-1. Now, traditionally, this would have to be A flat minor to D flat 7 to G flat major, right? But we didn't get a D, we got a G. But that was when I remembered that D flat 7 and G7 are basically the same chord. Follow me here. I don't want to get too lost in the weeds on this, but the 3rd and 7th of D flat 7 are the same as the 3rd and the 7th of G7. They're flip-flopped. The 3 of one becomes the 7 of the other, and the 7 becomes the 3 of the other, but they're the same 2 notes. The only note that's different is the root. But the takeaway here is that D flat 7 and G7 substitute for each other because the 2 most important notes of the chord are the same in both. If you consider this, we kind of have a 2-5-1 here. We've got a 2, and instead of our 5, we have our substitute for the 5, and then our 1. 2-5-1 via a tritone substitution. So we've now used all 8 chords that we were given. We got to figure out how to put a melody on top of it, but let's recap where we are. Our first 2 chords are a 2-5, C minor 7 to F7. Then after that, we turn our F7 into F minor, and we play another 2-5-1. That's F minor to B flat 7 to E flat major. And then to end it, we do our 2-5-1, but with that tritone substitution. So A flat minor to G7 to G flat major 7. So now that we're here, I think we've answered our first question, which is what is our key center? Our last chord of the progression is G flat major. So there we go. We're in G flat major. It feels kind of weird to me that we end in G flat major when we started in C minor, but we got there completely logically through functional harmony. So now for the really tricky part, we got to write a melody. All right, let's see what we can do with the melody. One tried and true approach is to focus the melody on the color notes, right? So for our C minor, that would be like a 3 or a 7 or a 9. There's also this movement on minor chords that goes like this. It's a minor major 7 that goes to the minor 6. And so we could exploit that in our melody. Right, because that 6 of C minor is also the 3rd of our F7. So as we go into our next progression, which is the 2-5-1 in E flat. So this F7 chord becomes F minor, and then we make a 2-5-1. So if we take this motif from C minor and now continue it over F minor, I like that. I kind of dig it because it gives us that repeating melody. So now we've landed on E flat major. We know we're going to A flat minor, then our G7, then our G flat. And that's our home, that's our 1. So going back to E flat, do we have any notes that are kind of in common across these chords? So I think this B flat could be in common between all these chords. Follow me here. So E flat, the B flat is the 5th. On the A flat minor, B flat is the 9. On G7, we got to get a little creative. G7 has a B natural, but if we need a B flat, we could consider that a sharp 9. It's an A sharp. And then our 1 chord, G flat, it's the 3rd. So our rule of trying to make sure the melody is a colorful note actually works on all of these. So we could come up with some kind of motif that just emphasizes the B flat. I don't like the ending. I feel like after this sharp 9, that B flat really needs to go somewhere. It needs to resolve. So what if we did... Ooh, that's nice. I think we're onto something. All of this music theory knowledge is not enough to make you a well-rounded musician. In order to do that, you need to have a good enough ear to hear things and then figure out exactly what you're hearing. So check out this next video where I show you my exact process that I use to take a song off the radio and figure out how to play it note for note.